Hi, I'm Charlie, and this is Stereo Hysteria. Our August artist of the month is Josh Caterer, who first rose to prominence in the 1990s as lead singer and songwriter of the Smoking Popes, a rock band that he formed with his brothers Matt and Eli and drummer Mike Fellamley. First forming in suburban Chicagoland as Speedstick, the band started supplementing their punk rock roots with killer guitar solos straight out of AC/DC, songcraft inspired by Tin Pan Alley and classic country, and Josh's melodic, crooning singing voice. Their unique style quickly earned them a following that caught the attention of Capitol Records, who signed them in 1995. But by the end of the 90s, torn between the world of rock and his newfound Christian faith, Josh left the band and stopped playing music entirely for a few years. But after a period of recentering his life, he returned to music, first with a new band called Duvall, and then, in 2006, reuniting with the Smoking Popes, who have been playing shows and recording new music since then. Last year, he teamed up with Chicago music mainstays John San Juan on bass and John Perrin on drums, and played a live-streamed show at local club The Hideout, where he debuted new arrangements of songs from the Smoking Popes catalog, as well as some classics from the Great American Songbook. That set was released on CD and vinyl earlier this year by Pravda Records as an album called The Hideout Sessions. Josh recently spoke with Stereo Hysteria over Zoom, and we'll be hearing bits of our conversation over the next hour. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Josh Caterer. I usually like to start these conversations off asking about the music that was important to you when you were growing up, but I guess particularly because your brothers Matt and Eli have been such close musical collaborators with the Smoking Popes, I'd imagine that music would have had to have been a major bonding part in the Caterer household.
Our parents were both lovers of music. Our dad played guitar a little bit. It was kind of an occasional hobby. I do have memories of him getting a guitar out and sitting in the living room and him playing songs out of these songbooks of what at the time were contemporary popular songs and rock songs. And the only one I distinctly remember is he was sitting there trying to play Night Moves by Bob Seger that he was reading out of a book.
Working on his night moves.
Yeah, he was working on it. And his sons were standing around in kind of a half circle, like kind of singing along. And although it wasn't until years later that I actually realized what that song is about. I just thought it was creeping around at night, just sort of working on your moves at night. But our dad had a lot of records. There were these kind of shelving units in the living room where he would keep the records on the bottom shelf so that his three sons could have access to them. So a lot of the first music that I heard in life were albums that my dad was playing and discovering music by looking through his record collection. He had all the Beatles and all the Stones and the Zeppelin and the Who in there. But then different singers, Frank Sinatra, Mel Torme, some blues, Muddy Waters records. I remember he had a copy of that Muddy Waters record that has Mannish Boy on it, where Johnny Winter is like screaming in the background. I'm a man. I spell him H-I-N. And I just was fascinated with that song and would listen to it over and over again. And just something about the energy of that screaming was really captivating. And I was fascinated by it. And then our mom liked country music. So she had all the Willie Nelson. She had like every Kenny Rogers album ever made. Some Dolly Parton, Loretta Lynn, things like that.
Yeah, good
so
stuff.
We're picking up a wide variety of musical influences from our parents. But then I feel like I was about 11 or 12 years old when we discovered punk music. And we got a bunch of it at once because we had this cousin of ours whose name is Brian Bowie. He came and stayed with us for a couple of days, and he was from Seattle. And he had all these records with him. And he had like Dead Kennedys, the Undertones, the Buzzcocks, the Ramones, the Stooges, MC5. And my older brother was able to convince him to, he bought this stack of records off of him for, I don't know how much he paid for it, like his allowance money or whatever.
Yeah.
But suddenly we had this stack of punk records. It just blew our minds. we already appreciated so many different genres of music, but this was something that was distinctly ours, that our parents, it's not that they necessarily hated or tried to forbid it or anything like that, but they didn't quite get it the way that we did. Mm-hmm. That felt cool to have like our own kind of music that was distinct from our parents.
I would imagine that part of the appeal was that it was more achievable. It's simple, direct, and very loud. It just makes so much sense to start playing music in that genre.
That's true. Although I think we also appreciated music that included like displays of skill. Like we were big fans of AC/DC and the kind of guitar playing that Angus Young was doing, and like Thin Lizzy and the kind of dual guitar stuff that was going on there. And I feel like we eventually tried to incorporate some of that into what we were doing. And we started with the Ramones because it was really easy to play.
Yeah.
Although like not everybody thinks that those kind of bar chords are easy. But once you can master the Johnny Ramone bar chord, there's some skill involved in that. But then you only have to play 3 or 4 of those chords in order to properly execute a Ramones song. So we started with the Ramones, and then we kind of worked our way up to some early AC/DC stuff, and then I started working on the guitar solos there. The thing about punk that was so appealing was just the attitude of it. It's not necessarily that it was easy. It was more that it was so aggressively countercultural, especially at that time. I mean, this was like the mid to late 80s that we were discovering punk. So it still was underground.
Yeah.
Whereas eventually in the 90s, it became mainstream. But there was something really exciting about the revolutionary feel of like listening to the Dead Kennedys in 1985. You really felt like you were tapped into something that was very grassroots. So that was very appealing. We were incorporating musical elements of punk, but as a songwriter, I was also picking up on a lot of these other influences and bringing some Frank Sinatra into it and some Willie Nelson into it and all that stuff.
From It's Been a Long Day, a 2010 compilation collecting the Smoking Pope's earliest recordings, here's a song called Wanted Love. Back to the very early days, like when you were playing like McGregor's, and there was this very strong punk rock west suburbs of Chicago scene with you guys and the Boll Weevils and Screeching Weasel and the Vindictives. And
yeah,
when you were all playing together, were you pretty much accepted in with it, or was there kind of a sense that you were doing something maybe more sophisticated, more nuanced?
Well, during that era when we were playing the McGregor's, that was really early in the band. That was like when we were still called Speed Stick. And then right when we made the transition to being called the Smoking Popes, we hadn't really developed the more sophisticated stuff. The guitar solos weren't very present in like the early 7 inches that we were putting out. They started to emerge more when we got around to making a full-length album, which was a few years into the band. So for those first couple years, it was just sort of like high-speed punk. I listened back to that early stuff. The 7-inches, I had not developed a vocal style with a vibrato in it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just shouting more. I mean, there were melodies there, but I wasn't delivering them in the more crooner type way that we came to be known for.
Right.
Eventually. So that worked well at McGregor's. We were just a punk band.
Yeah, I think some of the very early stuff kind of sounds a little Descendants-y. You have kind of a Milo cadence to the voice.
Right. I guess that's true. Like if I hadn't started to intentionally incorporate a vibrato, I might be more compared to Milo than being compared to Morrissey. He's very melodic, and I love the way that they construct their songs. They're great songwriters, and I know that, like Bill Stevenson, who does a lot of the songwriting, he's very influenced by the same songwriters that I am. I mean, we've played some shows with Descendants, and I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of conversations with him. We spent a lot of time talking about Cole Porter. Actually, the very first time I met Bill Stevenson, I don't know how Cole Porter came up, but the name Cole Porter came up in the conversation. And then his eyes sort of lit up, and he asked me if I knew the song In the Still of the Night. And I said, yeah, that's the one that goes, in the still of the night. And he's like, no, that's not the one. That came later. Cole Porter's version of In the Still of the Night goes like this. And he sang it for me. And it was a song that you would find, like Sinatra does a version of it. And, you know, I think Ella Fitzgerald does a version of it. But it's like, in the still of the night. It's more moody and I'd known him for all of 10 minutes, and he just stands there and sings to me this entire song. It was a strange and beautiful moment. But all that to say, I think that to a certain extent, the Descendants were kind of, you know, forerunners of like what we have tried to do, is that they have tried to take certain, you know, wider musical influences from older songwriting from the 40s and 50s and incorporate it into punk rock. I just think that those elements maybe are a little more apparent in our music because of the way I sing. But those influences are in there in the Descendants music as well.
Here's a song from the Smoking Pope's debut full-length LP, 1993's Get Fired, called Can't Find It.
It's so hard to be yourself with somebody else. Practice a lot when I'm alone. There was something that I really wanted to show you, but I just can't find it. I just can't find it. I just can't find it anymore. We can say all of the things that we used to say. I recall when we felt that way. There was a time when you were a part of me, but I just can't find it. I just can't find it. I just can't find it anymore. I'd come over tonight, but I just can't get over you again. And sometimes we forget why it ended, and then we have this problem again. There was a place in my heart where you once belonged, but I just can't find it. I just can't find it. I just can't find it anymore.
Your songs have a timeless quality. Like, the hooks are very strong and the lyrics are very economical. The feeling that I get is, like, it's dumb that this song hasn't existed yet. It's very hard to write something that sounds instantly familiar that isn't, like, obviously lifted from somewhere else. You know, there's a craft to sounding effortless. Was that something that you were thinking about, or did it just kind of happen naturally?
It happened naturally as a result of the kind of songwriting that I was being inspired by. And I think that the difference is something that is much more prevalent in modern songwriters is that you'll have a singer-songwriter who writes in their own voice. So they're not trying to write necessarily a melody for its own sake. They're trying to write some music and some lyrics that will serve as a vehicle for them to express their own particular voice. The older songwriting that have always been plugged into are songs that were actually written by songwriters who weren't also singers, like George and Ira Gershwin and Irving Berlin and people like this. These were professional songwriters who were writing for other people.
Yeah.
And they also knew that they were writing not only for one other person, they were writing songs that were going to be sung and interpreted by a variety of people. So it had to be a kind of melody that was very definite and distinct and strong, so that it had a personality of its own instead of the personality of a particular interpreter of the song, you know? And so I don't know how to describe it, but there's a very definite quality to those kind of melodies. I don't know. I spent enough time listening to those sort of melodies where I just could sort of get the feel of those. And I feel like I understand that sort of melody creation.
From the band's Capitol Records debut, 1995's Born to Quit, here's a track that became the band's first music video, an appropriately infectious song called Rubella.
I'm inflamed with desire and it's spreading like wildfire. She doesn't know it, but she'll soon be mine. It's just a question of time. Rubella, I'm insanely obsessed and I simply will not rest. She doesn't know it yet, but she's the one. And I won't stop until I'm done. Rubella, and the heart that she has stolen has now swollen to twice its natural size. I've lost 6 pounds since I laid eyes on her. Rubella. I'm in love with a girl, she's infected my whole world. She doesn't know it, but she's inside me. And now I've gone completely. Rubella, she explodes like a fist and she burns from the first kiss. I haven't told her, but she's all mine now. I knew somehow I'd catch her. Rubella, 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 Rubella.
So when you did sign to Capitol Records, like it was in the middle of this sort of post-Nirvana major label gold rush.
Yes.
I've talked to a lot of people who were on major labels in the 90s, and only in the 90s, and, were dropped in 1999.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's like some I was on a major label in the 90s bingo card that could be made of just like, we don't hear the single, you have to make a music video, you got your song in a kind of off-putting soundtrack, we need a different producer. And it's like you got all of these bingos.
Yes. I mean, all those things that you just said happened to us, just like all the way down the list. I guess it was pretty standard. Although I think that in our case, the result of those things turned out well. Like the movie soundtracks that we ended up being in are movies, for the most part, that I'm proud to be associated with. Clueless, Tommy Boy, Angus.
Oh, and the Angus soundtrack is fantastic.
Yeah, see, that's a good soundtrack. And so is Clueless. And yes, we got the I Don't Hear a Single, Write More Songs business. And I ended up writing I Know You Love Me, which is a song that I'm very happy with and happy that that song exists. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to say that it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for, Capitol Records asking for another song. I feel more like that song was bound to exist. Often inspiration is something that I think is God-given. And a lot of times songs, some of them I really feel like are gifts from God. Maybe it sounds a little grandiose to say that, but when I say that, I just mean that I attribute the inspiration generally to God in such a way that I believe that the song would have come into existence one way or another.
From 1997's Destination Failure, this is I Know You Love Me.
This world is freezing cold. I long for you to hold me in your arms. This world is burning and I'm waiting for your hand to lead me home. I know that you love me. Oh, I know you love me. Oh, I know you love me. This world is frightening. I see lightning in the sky. I hear the wind howl. Please help me to be strong. I know it won't be long till I'm with you. I know that you love me. Oh, I know you love me. Oh, I know you love me. Well, here I am, wandering down a darkened road, and your love shines always in my heart, always in my heart. I know that you love me. Oh, I know you love me. Oh, I know you love me. This world is freezing cold. I long for you to hold me in your arms. Please help me to be strong. I know it won't be long till I'm with you. I know that you love me. Oh, I know you love me.
That song comes from Destination Failure, which I have to say is one of my favorite albums from the 90s.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
The major label sellout album is one of those things, but it's not a sellout album. It's like just a great album with maybe more expensive sounding production.
I guess we sold out when we signed the record deal. But once we did that, we were pretty self-conscious about having signed to a major.
Mhm.
Because, being accused of selling out was a real concern for a punk band in those days.
Mhm.
And so once we had signed, we basically did everything within our power to resist the influence of the label and to be at odds with our A&R guy. The result was that we made a major label album that doesn't feel like a major label album. I mean, I listen back to that record and say on 98% of it, like, that was just our own inspiration. Now, there were a couple of songs where our A&R guy suggested that we would repeat the chorus at the end because we had this way of just sort of doing one chorus at the end of a song and then stopping. And so we agreed to do that. And I think, like, the fact that we re-recorded Let's Hear It for Love, that was our A&R guy's idea.
Okay.
Because he saw that as a potential single, and we sort of grumbled about it. Like, we just didn't want to be revisiting that. But looking back, I'm glad that we did, because we have a version of that song now that has that sound to it, where it was produced by Jerry Finn.
Yeah.
Not Jerry Finn has since passed away, but he was a really brilliant producer, and he had this way of making things sound like radio ready, but at the same time pretty organic.
Yeah.
And the tones are just like, some of those guitar tones on that record are just like tones that we'd always dreamed of having.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of his records, Jerry Finn's records, have that knack of like making punk rock into ear candy.
Yeah.
I know he worked on like the Blink-182 albums and some Morrissey albums, and yeah, they just sound so huge. And
yeah, and he did Rancid. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He was gone way too soon.
You've been pretty open about when you were in the Smoking Popes before the breakup. There were some unhealthy habits, and then it sort of became your entry into faith.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a sense that being the frontman of a rock band was incompatible with being a good Christian?
That was part of it, because Christianity was so new to me. I did not grow up in the church or anything, so it was a completely non-religious family that we came from.
Yeah.
And so that was all new to me. And so it really seemed like such a stark contrast with the kind of life that I had lived up to that point, that it didn't seem compatible. So I quit the band and quit rock and roll and sort of renounced all of it. At the time, I thought that was a permanent choice. But looking back now, I see that as a choice that had to do with a kind of spiritual immaturity that I was experiencing at the time, which sounds like more of an insult than it's meant to be. I just mean like, this concept of being born again, which is part of Christianity, means that when you first become a Christian, you are literally immature. You're like, there's a kind of spiritual infancy where you don't grasp the breadth of the faith. You're just grabbing onto certain basic concepts that have to do with, the simple gospel. Jesus died for my sins and he rose from the grave, and I have eternal life through him, and my sins are forgiven. And there's those sort of like simple truths. But, over time, I felt like I grew spiritually to the point where I knew who I was as a Christian in a way that wasn't going to be compromised by also playing rock music. Where I didn't feel that way for the first few years. I felt like those two things were in conflict. And if I stayed in the band, it would have overtaken my faith. I was a little concerned that I had seen certain musicians who came to faith and became Christians, and that seemed to be something that they were singing about for a while, and then they stopped, and it turned out to be sort of a phase, apparently a phase for them.
Right, the Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan being an example. I don't know where he's at now spiritually, but it would seem that, he was super into it for about 3 records, and then he just went back to being Bob Dylan. I was basically just scared that that would happen to me, and I want to make sure that it didn't. So I walked away from music for a while and sort of just focused on my faith, and I'm glad I did. I think I needed to do that.
Yeah. Was Duvall a part of this process of sort of going back to rock music?
Yeah, because I felt like, ready to come back to rock music, but maybe not ready to go back to the exact environment and re-embrace the exact material that I had. I needed something that was going to sort of express, it was going to be like a bridge between the Smoking Popes and where I was now. And so that's what Duvall was.
Were you mostly playing at like secular rock clubs, or was it more of a worship?
Yeah, we went back to most of the same clubs that the Smoking Popes had already played in. Duvall's crowd was smaller. We didn't have the fan base that the Smoking Popes did. And the people that did show up, most of them were Smoking Popes fans that were like, at least in some sense, open to the spiritual elements and the faith elements that I was bringing into the music.
Personally, I'm not a religious person, but I do think that the Duvall album, Volume and Density, is just one of the best collections of your songs. Even though I know it's coming from a Christian perspective, the themes and the lyrics are profound. It's searching for meaning and trying to live your best life up to your potential. I would say those are universal. Anyone who's willing to take them can get something out of them.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you like that stuff. And those lyrics were an honest expression of what I was grappling with at the time. I tried to express those things in a way that wasn't off-puttingly Christian. I wanted to be more like themes and ideas that had to do with bigger questions, finding answers to the bigger questions in life. So I'm glad that's how it came across to you.
Yeah, because it's not, strictly worship music. They're very personal, introspective songs.
Yeah.
And the guitar solos are totally awesome.
Oh, thanks.
It seems like you really went for it with the guitar solos on the Duvall album in a way that maybe we're holding back a little bit with the Smoking Popes records up to that point.
That's true, I think. Now that I think about a couple of the solos on that record, I was really proud of them. Even still, knowing that, like, maybe most of the people who listen to this record aren't going to particularly love this guitar solo. But, like, as a guy that grew up on Thin Lizzy, I would have moments of, like, I would play a guitar solo and we'd listen back to it, and I would just be like, well, I'm proud of it. And that's what matters.
From 2003's Volume and Density, here's Duvall with Way Deep Inside.
Way deep inside, I am shooting like a star, and my heart is racing like a race car. Way deep inside, I am jumping like a fire, and I'm tired of keeping it inside. Way deep inside, way deep inside. Way deep inside, way deep inside, I am burning like 1,000 suns for one eternal day. Way deep inside, I'm alive because of what you've done. Feeling A-okay, way deep inside. Way deep inside, way deep inside.
In 2005, you reunited with the Smoking Popes and did a show at the Metro.
I do remember that show felt like it was over in about 10 minutes. There was so much emotional build-up to it because we had not been a band for 7 years, and there was all this, once we announced that we were doing a reunion show, like it sold out really quickly, and there was all this like excitement, and it just seemed like this event, so we were like nervous, excited when we took the stage, and we were just like fueled by adrenaline, and I remember like walking off the stage and feeling like it was over in the blink of an eye.
From At Metro, a CD and DVD capturing that first Smoking Popes reunion show, this is No More Smiles.
No more smiles, it's just teardrops falling to the ground. Now it's around that I don't love you anymore, and I'm sore about it. When did my heart change its mind? Must have been during the change in time. No more smiles from now on, they are all gone. I'll never understand what went wrong. No more smiles from
So when you started touring again with the Smoking Popes, it was sort of a different operation. Like, you weren't on a major label anymore. It wasn't like your full-time job. And also, significantly, you had different drummers this time.
Yeah.
Like, first it was Rob Kellenberger of Duvall, then Ryan Chavez, and then Neil Hennessy, all of whom are total monster punk rock drummers.
Yeah.
But, you know, drums make a huge difference with the chemistry of the band. Did you find you were also playing or writing songs differently?
Yeah, I felt like when I started writing again for the Smoking Popes, I felt like I was searching for that voice that had come naturally to me on the early albums. Like on our first few albums, the music was just a natural product of the combination of these people. So it was very authentically itself, you know? Mm-hmm. And then when we got back together, I felt like there was, on my part as a songwriter, there was this attempt to get back to something, like to find whatever that musical identity was that we had before. Not that I wanted to try to recreate our old songs, but I wanted to, in my mindset as a songwriter, I wanted to get back to that place and proceed from there in my songwriting. But it was hard to do. And when I listened to the album Stay Down, is the first album we made after we got back together. And, you know, I'm proud of the stuff we did there. There's some good songs on that record, but I feel like I can hear the sort of effort that was going into like finding that voice again. And for me, it's a less enjoyable album to listen to for that reason. Although maybe some of that is emotional baggage that I'm bringing to the music when I hear it, because I know what was going into the songwriting process and that it wasn't as natural as some of the other songwriting that I had done. I don't know, the band, right when we got together, there was a lot of excitement and momentum and enthusiasm. Over the next few years, that all sort of declined. The band just sort of felt stale. I mean, there was some question at that point as to whether there would be another Smoking Popes album. I didn't know if I could go through that process again. I wasn't particularly planning on writing another Smoking Popes album until I got the idea to write a batch of songs from the point of view of a fictional high school student. And then these songs just like percolated up. As soon as I got that idea, I wrote a song a day for 5 days, and it was like the first half of the album. I made some quick demos, just acoustic guitar demos, played them for the other guys, and they were all like, wow, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, sure, let's make a record. You know, and it just sort of instantly had this effect of lighting a fire in the band. So that album was, for that reason, pretty fun to make. Like, it had a lot more sense of energy to it.
Here's the title track to that concept album, 2011's This Is Only a Test.
Congratulations, you made the team. Looks like you're living the American dream, but the owls are not what they seem, and you can't trust the referee. The game is fixed, and here's the prize. Lifetime supply of chocolate-covered compromise, and the long, slow, painful demise of your own autonomy. Now everybody thinks you're so great, and they all wanna be your prom date, but don't be too impressed. This is only a test. This is only a test. This is only a test. It's easy now for you to win, with empty confidence and picture-perfect skin. But when real life starts to begin, you will sing a different song. The geeks will rise and you will fall. Your mindless following will scatter one and all, and the rest of your life you will crawl through the dirt where test.
All that stuff that I was talking about, having a hard time recapturing our musical identity and like finding my voice again as a songwriter. It turns out that, you know, a big part of that was Mike not being in the Popes. And so the Popes actually felt different, you know, and we had great drummers, but we had great drummers who were, to a certain extent, trying to play like Mike Fellamley.
Mm.
You know, it reminds me of a quote that I heard from Iggy Pop during an interview where he said that when he got back together with the Stooges and started playing with the Ashton brothers again,
Yeah.
he said he immediately realized that he had been playing in a Stooges cover band for the last 25 years. And basically we felt that way as soon as we started playing with Mike again. It was immediate and effortless, and we just felt like the songs gelled again the way that they were supposed to. So yeah, the drummer is a very important member of the band. He really kind of defines the chemistry of the musicians, I think more so than any member of the band besides the singer-songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly true in our kind of band. I know that there are bands that are very collaborative in their writing, so it really depends on all the members of the band. But like our process is that I write songs on my own, bring them to the band, and then we all kind of like, as a group, we'll work on an arrangement, but we're not writing the songs together.
Mm-hmm.
And the style of playing that my brothers and I developed over the years, you know, starting when we were young, is that we have very similar strumming patterns.
Mm.
So like the rhythm guitar patterns that Eli and I are playing a lot of times are just the same. You know, it's just two guys playing the same thing on two different guitars.
Right. You're double tracked.
This is like double tracking a guitar in a way that like gives it just a little bit of texture because it's a different guitar played through a different amp. And it's even Matt's bass playing sometimes, like he's strumming the bass with the same rhythm that it's like the Caterer, patented Caterer strum. You know, we just all are doing that. So the thing that defines the personality of it then is the drummer that it's being combined with. And that when we put all of that together with Mike, it sort of felt like we could actually play songs from our first couple of records and they felt like it was really us again. You know, once we were back at that place, like I said before, songs just kind of started popping out like naturally and effortlessly. And I think that comes across on that album that we made, Into the Agony. It was very like, from our perspective, it felt very inspired and very like authentic. And the songs really felt like us. And we were super enjoying that.
And you sort of, for the first time, delved into like explicitly political songs with Melting America and Little Lump of Coal.
Yeah. I felt like, how could I not write about what was taking place in the political sphere in our country? Because it was so different and it was so front burner. I felt like, you know, in the 90s, I mean, there's always things going on that a person can have some energy about. But like as an American person in the 90s, you would have had the luxury, especially like, you know, the environment that the Smoking Popes came up out of, like we're a bunch of white guys who grew up in the suburbs, middle-class suburbs. We sort of had that luxury to like choose not to be particularly interested in politics and have that not be something that we felt we had enough interest in or passion about to write about. Part of that maybe is like getting a little older, becoming a slightly more mature person who actually thinks about things that are going on in the world other than, you know, my own little problems and like what girl I have a crush on this week. And then also, obviously, the presidency of Donald Trump became like this kind of political dumpster fire that just demanded some attention. And I felt like, you know, if we're in a punk band and we're going to make an album during that time period and we're not going to say anything about it, then I think we haven't really lived up to our calling. It's sort of in the job description. If you're even remotely punk, if you're halfway punk, you have to be upset about some of the things that are going on. You know, the fact that he pulled America out of the Paris Climate Agreement and he was like reversing a lot of the progress that we had made environmentally as a country and was kind of working to deregulate industry and just sort of do a lot of damage to our planet as a result of those things, that really made me very upset. And then the thing about his like overtly racist approach to immigration and refugees and the whole concept of building a wall was just so deeply offensive to me as a person and as an American and as a Christian. I felt like everything that he was doing and to approach that issue was so infuriatingly offensive to me that I had to write something about it.
Featuring guest vocals from Tobin Baywinkel of Flatfoot 56. From 2018's Into the Agony, this is Melting America.
Remember when Jesus taught us how to love, and the outcast is our brother. Now here we are, building walls to keep him out, full of hate for one another. Melting America, killing the dream, choking the greatness we're so desperate to redeem. Here's hoping things aren't as bad as they seem. Melting America. Melting America.
Remember when Woody Guthrie told us all that this land was made for you and me? Now here we are, turning refugees away from this precious land of liberty. Melting America, killing the dream, choking the greatness we're so desperate to redeem. Here's hoping things aren't as bad as they seem. Melting America. Melting America.
Remember when Dr. Martin Luther King cast a vision for our future?
I still believe we can make it to that place if we rise and stand together.
Stand together. Melting America, killing the dream, choking the greatness we're so desperate to redeem. Here's hoping things aren't as bad as they seem.
Melting America.
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 Most recently, you've started a band in like the weirdest time to start a band. I've heard of some bands that broke up in 2020, but I didn't hear about a lot of bands that formed in 2020. But you got together with John Perrin on drums and John San Juan on bass and
Yes.
did a live stream last year at the Hideout. What was behind you hooking up with those guys and starting something new?
Well, everything that the Popes had scheduled in 2020 got canceled, and we had some shows we were looking forward to. And just like every band, it all got canceled. And so after a few months, started to develop this real restlessness. And then I saw that the Hideout started doing some virtual shows. They developed a pretty regular presence with it. They were doing like almost weekly events in there in an empty club. You know, there was like some distancing with the people that were involved in it, but they had quickly adapted to the current situation and were putting music out there. And I just thought that was great. And I decided like, I want to get in on that.
Right.
And maybe that would be an opportunity for me to do something. So I'm not just like bouncing off the walls here. But then I just had the thought of like, well, this feels like an imposed break on the Smoking Popes. You know, it's like a break in the action. And so it feels like a time to do something else. Like instead of just trying to get the Popes to play one of those, it would be sort of like a caveat where I could just do something new that I hadn't done before. It pretty quickly occurred to me that I wanted to play with those two guys because I'd known them for a long time and I had admired their work, and they're both just brilliant guys. And I just had loved their playing, and it just seemed like if you put those two guys together as a rhythm section, it could be a magical thing. And then it also would be an opportunity to further explore the concept of the Party's Over album.
Mm.
Basically, ever since we made that album, I always felt like there's so much more material. Just a lot of these ideas sort of came together, and I was like, let's do a virtual show, and I'll do it with these guys, and I'll doing these old cover songs. And while I'm at it, I'll cover some of my own songs, and I'll do like drastically reinterpreted versions of some Smoking Pope songs and sort of put them alongside these other songs. Like one thing that I kind of really wanted to do was to do this song called What Kind of Fool Am I? Which was a hit for Sammy Davis Jr. back in the 60s. The vibe of that song, I always felt like it sort of informed the vibe and the melody and the cadence of the song Need You Around.
Yeah, I could see that.
Just the way that the melody moves is, what kind of fool am I? And it's, if I could see into your eyes.
Yeah.
They kind of felt similar to me. And I wanted to show the connection between my writing and the music that actually has always inspired my writing, and particularly to do an album where I put those two songs back to back so you can feel the continuity between the two, and to sort of liberate a song like Need You Around from the driving beat so that you can experience the melody and the sort of heart of the song in a different way. So you're taking away the kind of novelty of like, oh, it's I crooning over a super fast punk song. It's like, let's set that aside and just look at the song for what it is.
Right.
You know, what sort of emotional impact can that melody and those lyrics have when they're delivered differently and more slowly and more kind of thoughtfully? And so that, you know, that's the kind of things that we were able to explore on this record. So we were having fun with that stuff.
It just works so well. I mean, especially the song Someday I'll Smile Again. In any context, that's just so great. Like, it's a great punk rock song, but it also, I'm sure if it was offered to like Sammy Davis Jr. or Frank Sinatra, they wouldn't have said no.
Well, thank you. I'm happy with how that one turned out. We changed it from 4/4 to 3/4, which sort of changes the feeling of the song. Anytime you write a song, there's all these choices you can make about how to deliver it. How fast should it be? You know, should it be in 4/4 or 3/4, 6/8? What key is it going to be? Guitar driven, or is it going to be acoustic? Is it going to be keyboards? Like, so a song could be 1,000 different things.
And that's just about all the time we have for our chat with Josh Caterer. Thank you for listening, and special thanks to Josh for taking the time to talk with me, and for graciously weathering the buffering caused by my occasionally spotty internet connection. Be sure to tune in again next time, when our topic will be songs about tears. But before we go, from the Hideout Sessions, we'll hear Josh Caterer with Someday I'll Smile Again. This is Charlie, signing off.
Someday I'll smile again, just like I did before. Things that are painful now won't hurt me anymore. Someday I'll laugh again, after the tears have gone. Somehow I'll find the strength to stand and carry on. Someday I'll love again, someone who cares for me. Love that won't break my heart, love like it's meant to be. Someday this dream of mine will be reality, and I won't have to dream anymore. No, I won't have to dream anymore. Someday the sun will shine and all the birds will sing.